So, and we are in your office here, in our beautiful building in which we moved 4 years ago. What made you found the Woolf Institute 23 years ago?
Yeah, back in 1998, that seems such a long time ago, Miriam. I think there were two things. There was the fact there was no academic centre for the study at that time for Jewish-Christian relations. There were good relations and are good relations between Jews and Christians in the UK, but no centre that really explored it. So the first thing was to provide, to fill that gap and have an academically credible institute. And the second, of course, is the location. Here we are in Cambridge with its rich resources that attracts the best students, the best academics, and we could bring them here to explore this unique, intimate and intricate encounter.
And Cambridge is really, really important. The fact that we're here, that we have access to the amazing students and postdocs, that we have access to this world-class research that's happening all around us, and I think that's also been lifting us along all the way. But can we come back to the founding of the Institute? I've always heard that there's the apocryphal story that you were prompted to do this because someone said, we don't do religion in this country. Is that true?
Well, as you said, it's apocryphal.
Yeah.
And someone did say that, said that to Tony Blair back in the day. But you're right, we haven't wanted really to study religion, to explore religion, to rip off the garb and deal with these big existential issues, not simply from a theological or philosophical point of view, but from an identity point of view, a point of who we are. And so what this institute has always done, it's been based on a premise which I think is as relevant now as it was then, which is that you understand yourself better in conversation with somebody else. It's not just that I want to learn about who you are, but I learn about who you are and I understand myself better. And that premise is as important now, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think what always made us quite distinct as an institute is the fact that we really take religion seriously. We take religious community seriously. We take their customs and practices seriously. It's not just lip service. We really, really understand them deeply from within. And we understand the individual faith traditions in themselves and also in relationship to one another. And I think this is what you just touched upon. This is what makes you quite a special individual. You are an academic, but at the same time you have these great entrepreneurial energy. I think very, very few academics would have dared to put up a project like this, to raise that much money and to build us this beautiful home here. So what did you think this building would achieve for the Woolf Institute?
Well, before I answer that, and I would say that this building is as a result of many people's efforts, not just mine. And the wonderful gift that I've had and I've received is the support from across the different faith communities, both UK and overseas, not just financial, but in terms of just sustenance really in every which way. Not least the team here that you're now leading at the Woolf Institute threw themselves into the creation of this building. But you've asked, and I forgot what you've asked actually, you asked about what this building has achieved.
Yes.
I think this building's achieved two things already in the first 4 years of its life. The first is it gives a sense of permanence. When you don't have a home, you're always wandering. You're slightly rootless. And here in the heart of Cambridge, we have one of the most beautiful buildings, not the most beautiful building, of course, but one of the most beautiful buildings and workplaces in the entire city. When people, academics, faith leaders come, they love this building. So it gives a sense of permanence. But the second thing it does, and I think this is something that you are already exploiting and I'm sure will continue to exploit in the years to come, is it attracts people across the threshold. It facilitates meetings. It's been designed to be a place of encounter. A place of learning, yes. A place of dialogue, yes. But most of all, a place of encounter. Whether that's in the foyer or in the research hub or all these places that we're going to be visiting. You meet people, you learn from one another. And I think a beautifully designed building facilitates that. But let's tackle one or two of the more difficult issues because we've talked about how wonderful this building is and what we've facilitated, what we've created. But what have been the challenges? Now you've been asking me one or two questions, so let me ask you. Firstly, what's your vision for the next few years as Executive Director of the Woolf Institute? And secondly, what challenges do you think the Institute faces?
Research is really at the heart of everything that we do here. It informs all our work, it informs the public education, the outreach. So a very, very important part of my work going forward will be to grow the research programs, to be able that we have more, a bigger research cohort here, that we have more varied projects. And we're on a good track. We've attracted funding for quite a few projects that will start in the autumn. The challenges, of course, are manifold. So on the one hand, it's of course the financial situation with Brexit, with the COVID, the whole COVID pandemic, economic disaster that befell most institutions last year. So that's, on the one hand, this is something that we have to tackle by very proactive fundraising and by writing really sort of research grants that really appeal to a wide range of foundations and individual donors. But of course, we are in the business of tackling the really difficult issues here. And we see ourselves also as a place where difficult conversations take place. And the difficult conversations are extremely important to be had. Real dialogue is only possible when very, very difficult issues are being tackled.
Like what?
For example, if you talk about religious rights and freedom of speech, or if you talk about anti-Semitism, or if you talk about Islamophobia, or if you talk about prejudices within certain faith communities towards other faith communities, thinking of the Shia-Sunni conflict, thinking of the Jewish-Muslim conflict, thinking of prejudices towards particular types of sexuality that exist within the faith traditions that need to be addressed, that need to be talked about. So I think this is one of our duties here, because we know the faith actors, we know the academics, people trust us. So we can bring these difficult conversations here, we can have these difficult conversations, and we can teach people guide people how to actually have these difficult conversations. I mean, you've built on this in your own Holy Spaces work, which brought together Palestinians and Israelis. I've talked to Shia and Sunni faith actors.
At the moment, I'm putting together a project for the Woolf Institute that looks at political Pentecostalism and racism in the United Kingdom specifically. So the two groups that I'll be studying will be British Nigerian Pentecostals as well as British Caribbean Pentecostals. And they'll kind of serve as my demographical case studies. And so the hope for this research project is to have an understanding about how survivors of racism in the UK, in terms of Black communities specifically, how they draw inspiration and encouragement from their faith in the aftermath of these experiences with racism. So I'll be looking at theological responses to racism, and specifically how this can be engaged in terms of the UK government, putting together a UK policy toolkit for UK policy makers specifically. And so I look forward to the opportunity to blend the research that interrogates religion and racism in the UK to put together findings that are practical.
We're now in our Shasha suite, where we usually hold our conferences and seminars, and I'm here with Stuart Hargreaves, our newly appointed Director of Research, who is working on various partnerships. And do you want to talk a little about that?
Yes, I'd love to. So one of the attractions of working here is the ability we all have to apply our research in the real world in a practical sense. And to do that, we've established various working relations over the years. We've delivered training for the Foreign Office, we've delivered training for the Met Police. And so on that solid foundation of partnerships with third parties, in the last year or two, we've really ramped that up. So we provided support for the Commission for Countering Extremism. We've recently joined forces with a leading national mediation organisation and are currently designing a programme of training around anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which is being used by the Ministry of Defence, in particular the British Army. Some work we completed a couple of years ago on police stop and search within Muslim communities is currently being integrated into police training materials, which will be launched early next year. So we have a wide variety of examples.
And I hope that we'll be able to welcome all these people here again in this room post-pandemic.
Oh, that'd be great. I mean, to have some of our partners appear offline for us would be superb.
Not just on Zoom.
Exactly.
Do you have any concrete examples for this?
One of our major projects here at the Woolf Institute is the diversity in end-of-life care. And as part of the project, we've produced training materials and training programs for health practitioners who are serving patients at the end of their lives, particularly patients from faith backgrounds with particular religious beliefs, practices and needs.
This is one of my favorite rooms in the building, the research hub. This is where all our researchers sit. It's an incubator for ideas, it's where synergies are being explored, and all our PhD students are taking distinct projects while they are here as PhD students. What is your project about, Alisa?
So my project is called Living in Harmony. And basically it teaches students, so young students, not university students, about Muslim, Jewish, and Christian relations. And we do this through music. And so we have a workshop where we teach them Arabic rhythms and we get them acquainted with different instruments. And then we show them videos of bands that had both Muslims and Jewish musicians play together. And this is a way to kind of let these students peer into a reality that is maybe foreign to them, maybe far away from their daily experience, but one that we believe that is very attached. Really, we have an online quiz where they sign in with their phones, and so they see who is quickest at answering in their classroom, and who has the best knowledge of the different religions. And I think that is like a very interactive session that they really enjoy with their peers, and so I think that's something that they really like. And also sometimes after the music segment, after the music workshop, a bunch of students have come up to both me and Dunya, who's also on this project, and said how eye-opening it was for them to listen and learn about music that isn't Western. So I think those two parts are really what speaks to them most.
We are on the balcony of the Western room, which is our penthouse. It's on top of our building. It's what we use for smaller seminars, for smaller gatherings, and it's a really magical room. I mean, there's something that gets added to any event that we have in here, because the room is just so special with an amazing view. And you've organized some events in here, haven't you?
We've organised many events here, but there have been one or two very special events here, and one or two quiet events. And you're right, there's something about this space that allows people to talk to one another. So a couple of years ago, we had 21 Israelis, Palestinians and Jordanians from Jerusalem talking about the holy spaces, talking particularly about Al-Aqsa, Temple Mount, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And as you and I are speaking, there's an upsurge of violence in that very place. And what we were talking about is how to talk to one another. And the reason the Woolf Institute did it is because we're a place people trust. We're a place of expertise, but we are a safe space. And that's what this room, that's what the Woolf Institute can do. Now, you could say, that wasn't very successful, was it, Ed? But you know, eventually, you bring people together enough times that when the opportunity arises, there will be peace in that region. But part of that process, we can say, and I think we can say proudly, we've contributed to.
So we're now soaking in the magic of the Western room. We're here with Ahmed Zaidi, who is a member of our development council. And you've been part of many of our activities. Why do you support the Woolf Institute?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of it has to do with the uniqueness of the Woolf Institute. There's very few institutes in the world that really look in depth to not only the research of the Abrahamic faith or the interfaith relationship, but also translate that research into public output and public outreach. And as an academic, I am someone who really believes in the translation of research into reality. And I would say the Woolf Institute is probably the only institute in the world that does this sort of work.
One of my hopes for you, personally, and one of my hopes for the Institute in years to come is that you take it to the next level. What we've managed to do in the first 20 odd years with everybody's help is to be slightly ahead of the curve. And that's what you're going to do, Miriam. That's the next stage. That's what your management team are going to do. That's what Julian's going to do, and the researchers that we've have met on this, or are going to meet on this video, is take it to that next level, to be bold, to make a difference, and to teach our students and everybody we encounter, teach them the courage to care. And that's not easy. The courage to care, the courage to stand up, the courage to make a difference. And if you can do that, then in 23 years, when you hand over to your successor, you'll sit here and you'll offer your advice for the next stage.